Moussaka is one of the most iconic dishes in all of Greek cuisine. Today, I'm making a vegan version of this Greek classic, and I promise even the most diehard carnivores will love it. Let's get started. For my base, I'm using sweet potatoes. Oftentimes in a classic moussaka, we use potatoes as the base before we start adding the eggplant and the meat sauce. I changed it up a little bit today, and I'm using sweet potato, which is a little bit lighter and gives a nice sweetness. I'm going to get these onto the sheet pan and into the oven. I'm going to get a little bit of olive oil brushed over these, a little salt. And these are going right into the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 or 20 minutes, just to soften them. We don't really want much color on this. The eggplants next. You want these to be fairly thin, but also thick enough to hold up to the baking. I'm going to get these onto the sheet pan. A little bit of olive oil and a little bit of salt. These are going right into the oven. The whole basis of moussaka is this rich meat sauce, which I'm replicating today by using black beans and chickpeas. We're going to start with the onions. We're going to cook this until the onion is translucent. A little bit of garlic. The black beans go in next. I like to use black beans in recreating this moussaka for vegans because it comes as close as possible to the texture of the ground meat and the color a little bit too. And the chickpeas go in at this point too. Tomatoes next. And I've just got some chopped canned tomatoes here. I'm using some tomato paste, and that will help thicken this up. A little bit of red wine next. And now all of the typical spices and herbs that I would use in a classic moussaka sauce: cinnamon stick, bay leaves, and allspice berries. A little bit of dried Greek oregano, balsamic vinegar. An ingredient I love to use in a lot of my red sauces, betimezi, which is grape molasses, just to add a little underlying sweetness to this. A little bit of that flaky Greek sea salt, and some black pepper. Smells really good. The sauce has been simmering for about 15 minutes or so. It's really thick, but I'm going to mash some of the beans just to replicate that texture of ground meat a little bit. I'm ready for the next step, which is making the bechamel. And this is really interesting because I'm using something called aquafaba, which is basically the liquid from the canned chickpeas. It whips up exactly like egg whites. We're going to use that to make the bechamel really fluffy. We want these beautiful stiff peaks, just like meringue. Time to make the bechamel, the classic topping on any moussaka. We're going to start with olive oil and flour to make the roux. And we want to cook this until the flour is not so raw anymore. We don't want that pasty flour flavor. And it's time to add our two milks. I'm using coconut milk and almond milk. And the almond milk next. This is already starting to thicken up. A little salt. A little bit of white pepper. And a little bit of ground nutmeg. Time to add the aquafaba, the meringue from the chickpea liquid. And this will make the bechamel a little bit creamier, and it will also help it rise since we're not using eggs. I'm ready to assemble our vegan moussaka. Olive oil on the bottom of the pan. So we always add a little breadcrumb so that the sweet potatoes, or regular potatoes if that's what you're using, don't stick to the pan as this bakes. We start with a layer of sweet potatoes. Next, we layer the eggplant. Now it's time to layer the bean sauce over this. I'm just going to top this now in alternating rows of eggplant and sweet potato. It looks really pretty. Now it's time to spread that beautiful bechamel over the top. This is really thick and luscious, and it adds that sating quality to this. I'm going to sprinkle some breadcrumb over the top, and that's going to turn a beautiful golden color. This is ready for the oven. I'm going to bake it at 375 for about 45 to 50 minutes. Oh, that is gorgeous. This is a moussaka for even the most diehard meat lovers. It is so substantial. It's so rich. The black beans are so earthy, and all of these beautiful spices, the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the allspice, it's all coming through. But for me, what holds this whole thing together beautifully and makes it really, really satisfying is this creamy bechamel. This vegan moussaka calls for a big Greek red. Xinomavro from Naoussa. That is a Mediterranean climate in northern Greece, about an hour and a half from Thessaloniki. That's really well structured. This wine ages beautifully, and it's a perfect match for rich dishes like this. Ici Diane.